Welcome back to Autopsy of a Horror Movie. My name is Brucker, and today I am joined by Eliza and Jess of the Witchery Podcast to discuss and react to the newest installment of the Conjuring universe. But before we get into our conversation, I want to say hello and welcome Eliza and Jess. Hello, you two. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hello.
Hey.
Thank
hello.
you for having us.
Yeah, we're really excited to chat to you.
I'm very excited to have you two on, especially to talk about The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. But before we get into that conversation, will you please introduce yourselves and your show, The Witchery Podcast? And
Sure.
whoever wants to go first.
I don't mind. I'm Eliza. Obviously work with Jess on the Witchery Podcast. I'm a writer based in London, so I'm a screenwriter and I do some acting as well. And yeah, just a big fan of horror in general. Love a bit of horror.
I'm Jess. I'm also a writer. Mainly a boring writer. Mainly technical writing at this stage and copywriting.
She's a great writer. And a journalist. Hello.
And I'm based in Johannesburg, which is bloody cold at the moment, by the way.
Ew.
So, for people like me that are ignorant, where is Johannesburg?
Good old sunny South Africa.
Awesome. It is cold down there right now.
It is.
Oh, it's really hot where I'm at right now in Alabama. It's
it's really warm in London as well, actually. It's getting increasingly hotter, which I'm not enjoying. Not a good fan of the heat.
So we go into the horror behind the horror of popular horror movies, whether it's based on a true crime or the story that inspired it. So we actually covered the first Conjuring movie, and we went into the haunting of the Perron family, and the story about that. So yeah, mainly just the inspiration behind our favorite movies.
And spooky things that might happen on set too. You never know. Weird things from set.
Yes.
Yes, that is a very cool spin in this niche of horror podcast. And I listened to your episode on The Conjuring, which was very good. I recommend everybody go check that out.
Thank you.
And that was kind of, was sort of like, oh, those two would probably be fun to talk about. The new Conjuring movie that's coming out on June 4th. We have, so that's what we're here today to discuss The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This is the newest movie in the Conjuring trilogy, in the Conjuring franchise. We're going to have a couple moments up top to talk about this movie without any spoilers. So for the first few minutes here, there's no spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie, you kind of want to get the opinion on three people that are into horror, what this movie's like, whether or not you should look into it. That's what this top part of the podcast is going to be like. So I kind of want to take a few moments to get into our kind of spoiler-free initial reactions, what our viewing experiences were like. I will say this movie came out in the States on June 4th, both on HBO Max and in the theaters. I did not have the pleasure of seeing this in theaters because my timing is kind of wacky right now. But so I watched this at 8 a.m. Friday morning when it came out.
Wow.
Just
dedication.
Had to squeeze this in. And I will say that my initial reaction is that it's very different from the other two movies.
Definitely.
Whether that's good or bad, we will discuss, but it is very different. So if you're looking for variety, which I was, this kind of delivers on that. But I'm kind of surprised to see that this movie made nearly just under $10 million its opening day, which outbeats A Quiet Place 2, which is also surprising because A Quiet Place 2 did not also air on a streaming service. So people really like this franchise, obviously. But Liza and Jess, what are kind of some of your spoiler-free reactions to viewing this movie?
Well, I saw it in the cinema, actually. I was quite lucky. I saw it in the cinema in London, and it's probably my first trip post-pandemic, actually, into an enclosed space with some friends. So that was a bit weird. So it was kind of a mixed reaction of, oh God, I'm in a theatre. Am I going to catch COVID? And also, wow, I'm watching The Conjuring 3. So it was sort of, double-edged sword, as it were. There are two sides to it. So it's always really exciting to see, and all I will say on this is more depth to the Warrens. I think each film that you watch about Ed and Lorraine Warren, from The Conjuring 1 through to Conjuring 3, you're seeing more of them. They're definitely more of the driving force, and you feel that you're understanding their fictional, let's just say, relationship a hell of a lot more, which I really liked. I always liked that. They're my favorite part of the Conjuring universe is Ed and Lorraine Warren particularly. So I loved that. I loved the fact that you saw something else about their relationship developing, and it was very gritty and very dark in places. It just, you could immediately feel that there's a different director involved. There was an immediate change of pace in that respect, and I think it's a lot darker than in tone. So not quite as many odd quips here and there. You'd get the odd quip that would be, and these very kitsch moments, like in The Conjuring 2 of Ed Warren singing an Elvis song, of course, which they allude to.
There's
in
no
the Conjuring
Elvis in
3.
this.
No, they allude to it. They have the song playing in the car, but they don't. It's not quite as homely and carefree. Of course, I mean, none of the Conjuring movies are completely homely, but it's definitely a darker path.
I enjoyed it, not as much as the first one. A hell of a lot darker. And I enjoyed the extra added little bit of a storyline and theme that they brought in. Trying to make this as spoiler free as possible. I both
know what you're talking about. Know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, I agree with you there, because this is definitely, I think this is what you're kind of like alluding to. This is the most plot heavy one of the trilogy. Yeah, because this definitely kind of felt like a J.J. Abrams like mystery box fetch quest at times, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Kind of, so we'll get into it. And I liked how Eliza brought up how you definitely feel the lack of James Wan behind the camera in this, and I'm going to point to, there was more slow-mo in this movie than I anticipated.
Do you know what it reminded me of in some ways? And again, trying to allude to what Jess was alluding to without saying too much, is a lot of the late 70s, very early 80s horrors that came out of America that were more serious in tone. There was more of oh God, I can't say it without the spoiler alert. I think Jess will know what I'm alluding to. But there was more of a panic about certain things that were going on in society. And there were a few films out around that time that were sort of darker in tone, relating to that sort of side of life, effectively. And that's definitely what's coming through in The Conjuring. Well, I did feel a lot of the times like I was watching something that actually was made in about 1980. As opposed to the other Conjurings, you can tell that they're modern, more, jump scare horrors in some way. This did feel like it had a very slight, more of a vintage film vibe to it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But I felt a bit more transported back in time, actually, than the other two, to be perfectly honest. As much as I love the other two more, I did feel this felt a bit more authentic. I can't explain quite why, but it did.
I think I know why. I think it's because there's so much exterior. We get so much of like the exterior world in this movie. We're not confined to one location the whole time.
Yeah,
that's true. And you're brought into the, again, without giving too much away, you're brought into the central plot straight away. You're literally sucked in. It's sort of the opening is where this is going. Whereas with the other Conjurings, there's a lot of build and of tension. But the tension comes in a very different way in The Conjuring 3. It comes through a lot of the relationships in the aftermath of this opening scene. Which really is part of the biggest action, really, that you see until a lot further in the film again. So I think that's true. That was it for me anyway. Sort of, it was, oh wow, okay, I'm right in the middle of this. Literally walk into the cinema, sit down. There are no trailers at the moment in cinema, so you sit down, the film's on, and wow, you're in it. So it is.
Wow, just cut to the chase, get in and get out.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly, yeah. So that was the difference I found from the other two, to be honest.
You two both mentioned how this had like a darker tone. Did you two feel like that this one was scary or as scary as the other two movies? Because I wasn't really too scared. Like, it is scary at points, but I wasn't like as shook as I was when I watched the first two movies. This one, I don't know. What do you two think about that?
There are moments that are definitely unsettling, especially in that opening, the opening bits. But it's not scary. It's just like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
More than anything else. But I definitely think the first one is still the scariest. But I find that with all horror franchises, the first one's usually always the scariest.
It is, and
Mm-hmm.
usually the best as well. No, I agree wholeheartedly with Jess. I walked out of the cinema with my friends, and we all said the same thing. That was really enjoyable, but I did not
Mm,
get the jump scares that I was kind of expecting. Because normally with the Conjuring universe, you do get more of the, oh wow, I'm completely jumping out of my seat here and there, but I didn't in this one. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it, and definitely unsettling. Unsettling, the word Jess uses, perfect. Unsettling, but
Yes, absolutely. And I couldn't tell if I wasn't scared because I was watching this in the morning, and I was also in preparation for this movie. I rewatched the first two movies last week to kind of like get myself built up. So that first one terrifies me so much every time I watch it, and the second one is still scary. But I don't know. I wonder if like, am I like a little numb now to it? Am I just now kind of expecting what it is, or but and I think again, I think it's because there's so much plot. Like there's so much dialogue and like mystery solving stuff going on in between some of the
mm,
scares in this. And so it's kind of like, they'll try to figure something out 15 minutes, then there's like a showdown with someone, and then 15 more minutes and another spook showdown and whatever. But
yeah,
that was
mhm.
kind of like the formula of this. I will say, like you two, I did enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed at least the creative spin they tried to do with this. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga were great as always. I really do like hanging out with them in a movie.
Oh, yeah.
So I would
yeah,
say, without going into spoilers, what I specifically liked and didn't like, I would at least recommend people checking this movie out.
Oh yeah, I would agree. And I think just what
definitely,
you
yeah.
said with the formulaic, there's a formulaic element to it, which does
Hmm.
desensitize you. And I think that does happen with any film series. I mean, look at something like A Nightmare on Elm Street by film three. You're like, oh god, okay, I know exactly what Freddy's doing. So there is that aspect, but obviously it's a much better made film, a much better, well written, etc., and much better acting. But it is the same thing if you know what you're dealing with. I think when you do know what you're dealing with, it does desensitize you to the scares a bit. We watched it at 8 o'clock at night, in a very dark theatre, and yet we still were like, oh, okay. But not in a bad way, because we still really enjoyed it. I don't think you need to be scared to enjoy a horror film. You don't need to be
Hmm.
scared. You can still get sucked
Mm,
in and enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the acting, enjoy how good a script is. You don't need to jump out of your seat, but sometimes it's quite
Very
nice.
true.
Every now and again, it's quite nice to
Hmm.
have the odd jump. I mean, I watched Rosemary's Baby how many times? I don't jump out of my seat watching it, but it's still one of the best horror films of all time. So, you don't necessarily need to be screaming your head off. There can be something unsettling. Unsettling is a good word.
Hmm. Here was the question I had before we get into spoiler talk. Okay, for people that are listening that aren't too familiar with this franchise, are you two have the same opinion as me? Is that you could probably just pick up this movie without seeing the first two and still get
Mm.
it for the most part? I mean, there's like some Easter eggs and things like that that you'll definitely miss out on, but I feel like if you wanted to try to dip your toe into this franchise but you've been too scared to, this one might be a good one to start out with maybe. Or like you don't necessarily need the knowledge of the first two movies to get this one.
definitely, I think it's a great standalone. And I think because it's not as scary, even though it's unsettling as the first two, it's
Hmm.
definitely a nice intro into the Conjuring universe.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. I think you see straight away the relationship between Ed and Lorraine. You know what they're doing. You know exactly from the opening scene what it's about. Yeah, you again, like you said, you might miss out on the odd little, quirky sort of comment and throwback
Hmm.
to the other films, but that's not that essential. You'll get dragged in straight away.
Yeah,
Yeah, like maybe at the end when Ed goes to put that's how every this isn't a spoiler. Every Conjuring movie ends this way. When he goes into the little room to put the little trinket in there and be like, "What's this room?" But yeah, you'll
You'll know eventually it's the occult museum.
yeah,
We
yeah,
work it out. Yeah.
exactly. We are going to now transition into some spoiler talk. So if you want to stick around for that, please feel free. But if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the movie, then come back and finish this episode. But Eliza and Jess, let's get into the nitty gritty of this movie. So I want to kind of start off this conversation with basically the big elephant in the room with this movie. So about what makes it so different from the other two. So this movie is not a haunted house movie. This delves into the world of the occult, and there's actually been a curse placed on the Glatzel family and the Warrens. The person cursing them is the illegitimate daughter of a priest, formerly Father Kastner. So it kind of turns more into kind of like a crime mystery, sort of, with demonic and spooky elements in it. So, how did we feel about this transition in the franchise? This different type of thing where it's not a haunted house; it's more of a who is the occultist that's cursing these two families solving mystery. How did we feel about this?
I always love a bit of Satanic Panic. Sorry, Jess. Let me interrupt.
Yeah.
I always love a bit of Satanic Panic. I'll talk after you. Go first.
No, I was going to say the same thing. Like, I love the Satanic Panic, and I love that element, but I also, like, I love and hate it. Because I
Mm.
love it because it's different, but I hate it because it's different. If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
In a weird way, I'm not about the possession side of it, but the whole Satanic Panic is very relatable to the time as well. So it's
Yeah.
based in, it sounds very odd to say, but based in more reality than say a similar Amityville haunted house or a
Yeah.
Enfield haunting. It's those things that always seem a bit more fantastical, but Satanic Panic was a real thing of people actually believing in the occult, it being very prevalent in American culture, I mean worldwide as well. So I think it's a little bit more real, even though of course it's not because it's the Conjuring universe, but there's a little bit more reality in it.
Mm-hmm. I personally really liked it. I mean, I don't know if it like helps boost it in like my rankings of these movies, but I wrote like a little piece on my Buy Me a Coffee page saying I don't know what to expect from this movie because I went in completely blind. I don't know if I said that, but I didn't watch any trailers or anything. I think like that's kind of like the best way to approach these movies because so that way you aren't trying to piece together. Okay, well I haven't seen this part from the trailer yet, so how do we get there? Kind of thing. I just watch it. Um, I will say the one thing that I said that I was hoping to get out of this is something different, and the movie did deliver on that. So I was kind of happy it wasn't just another haunted house movie because not gonna lie, I might have been bored with that just because I watched the other two movies so recently.
Mm.
Um, but I did enjoy the mystery, getting to the occult. Its execution wasn't the best, but it was still. I mean, I still enjoyed it. I mean, again, I think that plays into how we talked about earlier that James Wan just wasn't behind the camera of this because again, there's some weird slow mo in this and that also kind of goes into how we talked about we just didn't feel we felt more unsettled like that instead of scared in this is because you're trying to solve a mystery. But I mean, I liked it. I mean, you gotta do something different for
Mm.
the third movie, right?
Oh, totally.
Definitely. And I think that's exactly it. I think it's the execution that I didn't really like, whereas the Satanic Panic and the murder mystery, well, not the murder mystery, but the mystery behind it all is very, very intriguing. It's just how it
Mm-hmm.
plays out. It's just really weird. And the inconsistency between the two possessions as well. Um, because unfortunately, I am that type of person where I'm like, this doesn't match up. Why is this person levitating and that person isn't?
I did think that as well. I did. It is odd. And it's sort of also like, I don't know, this sounds a really odd thing to say about a horror film. And I'm probably sound weird, but it felt like it was missing its heart. And because each time you get Ed and Lorraine Warren and they're getting, you learn more about them and that's brilliant. But it felt like they'd been picked up out of The Conjuring 2 and placed in an entirely different location and just told just to get on with it. So they were still there and
Mm.
they were holding things together because the actors Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are just insanely brilliant. And the characterizations of Ed and Lorraine, which obviously aren't real to life, but are very much a creation, work beautifully, and we all are invested in them. We love them. And though the story was great and the other actors were brilliant, it just felt like a different universe. It felt like it had been picked up and put in a different universe. I'm not quite sure what that universe is, or even if it's a bad thing, but it just felt like there was a certain heart to it. Maybe the relationships behind the scenes that had been built up with the director and the crew that were then
Mm.
different on the third one, and maybe the actors felt disjointed. I don't know. There was like a vibe that didn't feel the same, and that sounds really weird, but it just didn't
No,
feel
no, no, no. I
the
totally
same.
get that, and I liked what because you were totally right because this lacked some sort of like emotion or heart behind it because like I'm going to keep comparing this to the first two movies that because since they are haunted house movies that kind of really alludes to, there's a family being affected, and so you're kind of seeing this family break down throughout the movie, and there is emotion behind that, because that is,
Mm.
you know it's easy for you to put yourself in those shoes of, what if this was going on with my family, how would I want to protect my family and fix this. But with this one, it kind of does like a bait and switch like three different times, where it makes you think,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to be about the little boy David,
Yeah.
but it's not. And then it switches to Arnie, and you're like, oh no, Arnie, like, you're about to get married, you're about to start, your young adult life with this girl that you love, and then you're tricked by the devil to kill someone. Like, oh no. And then it's like, okay, we're done with that. And the Warrens are like, okay, now then it changes to, we gotta solve who is the occultist in this. And like, the emotion isn't focused anymore on fixing this poor couple's lives anymore. It's just like, we need to prove that there is an occultist.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that kind of plays into the void of real emotion and heart in this.
They're missing a family unity as well. So in the first one, you've
Mm.
got the Perron family. In the second, you've got, I've actually forgotten, I'm afraid, of the name of the characters, but you've got a single mother and her children in a
Yeah.
house in Enfield. And then in the third one, it's like, exactly what you just said. You've got a family at the beginning that you think you're going to get invested in. Then you very rarely see them again. But you've actually got this young boy, and then you've got back to the Warrens, which I always love. Give me more Warrens. I'm thrilled to have more of them. But there was a family element to The Conjuring that always feeds back into their own family dynamic, their own fictional family
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. It must be said, with their daughter at home and their marriage. And you can see sort of things that mirror through different households into their world. You didn't
Yeah.
get that so much in this third one. And I don't know, maybe that's the difference I noticed. Maybe that's what makes it darker, and maybe that's what makes it, better, because it isn't like the other two. And they are having a
Oh.
departure. Maybe, they're supposed to change things up a bit.
It's a good point. But I think that's also kind of what makes it great, though, is the fact that you
Mm.
can kind of relate so much to the people on screen.
Mm.
The first two, like with the haunted houses, it's like, okay, cool, like I've just moved house. What if my house was haunted? What do I do? Whereas like possession just feels so much more removed almost.
Yeah, I suppose there was an element of possession in The Conjuring too, in as much as the little girl, was she being possessed by the ghost of the old man, in the chair when they think she's throwing her voice and she starts talking. So there was a slight build to that, but I know exactly what you mean. It's the occult thing with it, I think, is so far removed. And I mean, I suppose they have to change things up. That's probably the way they do get the box office to get 10 million in one day, is because it's being billed as it's a new story. It is something totally new. And you can't just keep going down the same avenue, because people will get bored. Look at Freddy Krueger. It's that kind of thing. And I love Freddy, don't get me wrong. But when you look at those franchises, they get very tired. I mean, Jess and I were talking about franchises this morning, and they do get tired. So I suppose they want to keep people coming in. And the way of doing it is, a Satanic Panic. It's relevant to the time. Because that was it.
Definitely.
It works with that time period.
I just want to say that kind of getting a little meta about this is that I am personally worried for the mental well-being of Julian Hillard, who played the little boy David in this, because
Oh, good lord.
he played baby Luke in Haunting of Hill House, and he was in
wow.
the that horror movie with Nicolas Cage that came out in like 2019, Color Out of Space, and his character did not make it out of the movie either. Spoiler warning. And then he had a very intense and pretty like graphic possession scene in this movie. So like, this little kid actor has just been in some like huge like horror movies and shows. In like The Haunting of Hill House, that's really like filming like 3 or 4 movies because of how long those episodes are.
This is true.
So I am personally worried about Gillian Hillard as as a child actor.
What are his parents and agent doing to him? Putting him up for constant
Money,
horrors. Money.
Yeah.
No, not going to say, not making any accusations at all. But I mean, he's a very good young actor.
Allegedly that they're doing it.
But very good young actor, though. Very good young actor.
He's adorable. He has like the cutest is the cute face, and he's still pretty small, and he wears those big ass glasses. So yeah, it's just like it's like the equivalent of like putting a dog in danger in a movie, but you you get this really cute kid.
It's like, don't do it. Don't go over there.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite a good description. Putting a dog in danger. That's exactly it. You
Yeah.
feel for that poor little kid. Um, yeah, when he's lying on the waterbed and
Oh.
shit goes down, it's just like, yeah, that for me was like almost terrifying. It's like, no, don't do it.
And he looks so petrified as well. That poor little thing is like soaked with
That
water and absolutely scared out of his wits. But you do feel protective of children in these horror films when you look back at, Poltergeist and things like that, even watching them
mm,
now.
Mm.
You can get these really brilliant little performances from kids and you feel ultra protective, which I suppose is another way to draw the audience in. Put a cute little kid in who's being possessed and we're going to be invested straight away.
Yeah,
very true.
definitely. And it's also kind of like that thing of it's putting you in the POV of somebody that you kind of view as vulnerable. So it's trying to make you feel vulnerable in that part of the movie to try to scare you as well. Which I'll say, the little short scene we got of him in the bathroom in the shower, you see like the little hands on the railing. That was
Nope.
probably that's probably one of the times in the movie where like I felt like the chill go down my spine. I was like, ugh.
It was
Yeah.
horrifying.
I will say I did find it really interesting of how hard that the movie was trying to parallel the Warrens to the formerly father Kastner, the man that has like the little room of occult items and books. Um, I felt like that they were really trying to parallel those two a bunch because he also had a room filled with just cursed objects. And the interesting thing was that Lorraine Warren was scared to go in there, even though she has her very own back home. And he even is trying to like convey this message to her, but like he said, be careful what you obsess over because our obsessions become what our children inherit our obsessions. And he's trying to like tell the lesson of how his daughter became the occultist because she grew up with this stuff in the house and she became obsessed with it, but in a darker way. And that's kind of like that's who the villain of the movie is. So I don't know, I just found that interesting that the movie was trying to go that way just because of how much these movies kind of ignore Judy Warren, their daughter. She had like one line in this movie, and it was when Ed woke up in the hospital. She goes, "Oh, Dad, like you're good," or whatever, and then we don't see her again for the rest of the movie. And so I just found that interesting. That I don't know. I felt like they were really trying to parallel those two together.
Yeah, and it's I think also like right from the beginning when you first meet him, the ex priest. I can never remember his name. Um,
Kastner.
there we go. And when they're in his little basement museum storeroom thing, and the question's asked, "Oh, is anything in alphabetical order?" And he's like, "No." Well, how'd you find anything? Well, good luck. It's just right off the bat, you get the comparisons between the two, where it's like, okay, this is chaotic, whereas they're like more organized, more like in it for good, and
It's also what you're
yeah,
used to, isn't it? Like with Lorraine Warren, it's the things she's familiar with. It's the things she's worked on. So she's going into a room full of the unfamiliar and things that are already sort of terrifying her. Because she often gets she's an interesting character because she walks steadfast into situations, but at the same time, she often gets either fainting or she sort of gets very very vulnerable and emotionally connected to things. But even though she's a very
Mm-hmm.
strong character, a very strong woman in these films, she's also very emotionally vulnerable. So in this, she's walking into a room of things she's never experienced. I suppose it's her most emotionally vulnerable. It's something she can sense straight away that she doesn't want to have to deal with. And Judy Warren, I actually didn't realize was Judy. I just have to say, when she popped up in the hospital, I was like, is that the fiance of Arnie? Is that Arnie's fiance, David's sister? I was like, is that her? She's another like pretty brunette. I was like, oh no, she's not. She's the daughter, right? Okay. That's how much I didn't register till further in. Oh, that's
Yeah, because
Judy.
again, like we don't get to see her grow up because I think that okay, she's in like one or two scenes in The Conjuring 2, but still, like
mm,
we just that's just kind of shows like how much again, I guess like kind of like the span of decades that the Warrens were active, right? So now we're in
Yeah.
the 80s in this movie. Judy is I guess a teenager in this. So yeah, I don't know. I just find it so interesting that the movies kind of just really ignore her in this. In these, I don't know.
I wonder whether it's something she actually actively asked for. Like, she knew that she'd be happy for her parents to be depicted in the Conjuring, but maybe she actually didn't want to be. Maybe she wanted to
Oh,
stay more around.
interesting.
I don't know. I'm just wondering whether that was anything to do with it, or whether it's just they want to focus on the marriage more. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if she's a producer or anything. I'm not sure how involved she is.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that Lorraine was before she passed in 2019, but yeah, I don't know. That'll be something for me to Google after this.
Same. I assume then
What
if
is
Lorraine
Judy
was
Warren
before.
up to these days?
Where is she? I know her husband used to run the occult museum before it closed. It closed in like 2019. I'm not sure why, but her husband used to run it.
Oh.
But yeah, you can't go there now because Jess and I were talking about this recently. Like we wanted to go at some point. We can't go. It's closed.
That's not fair. How could they close it? What are we supposed to do now? Where are we supposed to go for occult stuff?
No.
Think of the children. Yeah, that's
Where can we take Nathan? Where can we take your son on a trip? We can't take him to the occult museum. Damn it.
We will have to take him to a haunted, abandoned amusement park then. That's all there is.
That's next on the list. He'll love that. Brilliant. That's what we'll do. Brilliant.
I did like how these movies do kind of focus on Ed and Lorraine. Those are the characters that we're following throughout each movie. Because I do really like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's, I don't know, performances in these movies. I feel like they're like kind of perfectly cast, especially Vera Farmiga. I don't know. I saw a really funny Letterboxd reviews as somebody said like Vera Farmiga says a word and then like your reviews just, oh, brilliant, the best, this is just great, 5 stars. Like I just feel like Vera Farmiga was perfectly cast in this franchise, and I do like how we are getting some more. We kind of got like a little bit more of her, I guess, like sensitivity, or like her like power, I guess I'll say, of how she's like sensitive to like certain objects and like spiritualism and everything. And this kind of did a different twist on that, sort of, where we kind of see her reenact a lot of the violence that she's kind of perceiving, especially like in the woods with the officer, and she kind of mimics the stabbing of that happened there and everything. And I felt like we haven't gotten to, maybe we've got like a little bit of that in the second movie, but we haven't got like a whole bunch of that. It's normally just like we kind of just see her POV in her head of like what she's witnessing, but not actually doing. And so this was, again, I feel like kind of like a different directorial thing to do. It did kind of come off as cheesy at some points when we kind of just see her with Patrick Wilson's POV, and it looks like she's just trying so hard to like win a game of charades. But like I don't know. I don't know. So some of that kind of like stuck out to me. It's like, okay, this could have been done maybe a little bit better.
But it was quite interesting at the same time, where it kind of brings that whole elements, another element of the Warrens' lives, where Lorraine actually consulted a lot with the various police departments across the states.
Mm.
And if I'm not mistaken, she was also that because of her involvement in a lot of cases, they actually had to like do a whole playbook, or they helped with the playbook or something, which I thought was quite interesting. So it's also nice to see that.
Yeah, I honestly don't know too much about the real life Warrens. I haven't done my own homework. I can admit to that, but at least the fictional Warrens I really like.
You probably wouldn't like the
I have
real
no idea
life
how they
ones.
were like in real life.
Yeah, you
No,
probably
I don't think
wouldn't
you'd like them much.
Lots
No.
of dubious. I think this is what makes them so good. Jess and I have talked about it before. The actors is that, and what they've done with the films is that in reality, and of course this is all alleged, so we're going to say allegedly, but if you read articles, there's a brilliant one in the Hollywood Reporter that came out a couple of years ago about who were the real Warrens, and that effectively, this brilliant, strong marriage of real love and unity between these two was very much more of a business relationship. That effectively Ed Warren was involved from his mid to late 30s with a 15-year-old girl, and they were involved with each other for 40 years. And she even lived in the Warrens' house, and Lorraine used to just ignore what was going on. That's all alleged, obviously, but there is this Hollywood Reporter article. And then stuff about Ed and Lorraine obviously being charlatans, and that they stormed into the Enfield haunting. There was the guy, Morris Gross, and Guy, I think his name was Guy Playfair, I think his name was, who were actually leading the Enfield haunting in London and leading the investigation. And Ed Warren pretty much turned up and was like, yeah, I can make a lot of money out of this, so I want to get involved. We could write a book together. We could do all this. And he was around for like a day. and then left. But yet there's a Conjuring film about it, about their full involvement, and none of it's true. None of it's true.
That's
So but thing is, I think as long as for me, it doesn't actually bother me. I mean, I read these things about the two in reality and I go, oh God, probably not two people I'd want to sit down and have dinner with. But I love what they've created in the Conjuring universe, because that's what you'd want to watch. Nobody would want to watch the real Ed and Lorraine from the sounds of it, from what's alleged. You want to watch Vera Farmiga and you want to watch Patrick Wilson in this true love story, because it's like love conquers all, good against evil. The true story of the Warrens probably doesn't really convey the same. If you've got Ed Warren with a 15-year-old and when he's in his 30s, it's not the same thing. So
no, I saw a clip earlier on. So I was watching some behind the scenes and some like interviews with Ed and Lorraine, and there was one something that Lorraine said that she was describing how they met, and it is that the way they went. She went with friends to go watch a movie, and then she met Ed and they went for soda afterwards or something, and she said that he offered to buy everyone a Coke, and she doesn't drink Coca-Cola. She says it's nasty stuff, so she ordered a soda pop, and Ed's comment was, she was a gold digger from the start.
Yikes.
Not really, very much like the Warrens we see in The Conjuring.
Yeah, just give me Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, please. Yeah, just
I mean, they are the attraction of the film, really. They are the big attraction.
And then I guess that kind of like gets into like a discussion of, how ethical is that these movies kind of glorify them without really detailing how they actually were. But I don't know. I feel like if you ever watch a horror movie and it says based on a true story, you kind of should probably try to do your own homework, because I mean, like even like Texas Chainsaw Massacre says based on a true story, like at the beginning of it. So you kind of gotta do your own homework too sometimes. But
I think people will be very. It's a bit like watching The Crown on Netflix and thinking that is exactly the way the royal family lived. I mean, watching Ed and Lorraine. Yeah, if you believed the Conjuring films, you'd be greatly disappointed if you read that Hollywood Reporter article. So probably best, never the two should meet, just keep the two apart. Keep your Conjuring apart from the reality, because they're very different. But I think it could educate people in the wrong way, because, we are glorifying them. But effectively in the film, they're fictional characters, because the stories are fictional accounts of things that happened. So I think you're allowed to have poetic license and play around with the characters a bit as well, or a lot. In this respect.
Yeah.
And I haven't done my research for this movie yet, but for the first Conjuring movie, I did see that, because the movie really seems like everything ramps up like the first week that the family moved in there. I read that the alleged events of the hauntings in that house apparently took over the time span of 17 years. The family lived there, and so it wasn't just like they moved in and within 2 weeks or a month they were out. And also the person that they kind of blamed all this on, Bathsheba, she was like a witch tried, but she wasn't found guilty actually, and she died of natural causes like late into her life, and she wasn't this person that's committed suicide and sacrificed her soul to the devil or whatever. So these movies, they pick things like, oh yeah, this was a real person who was tried, but we're changing the course of events of how that trial went and what she did. But yeah, so I haven't done my homework yet for the Glatzels, but I was kind of surprised to see at the end of the movie that like he only served 5 years for manslaughter. And that to me went, okay, you tell me that the demonic thing maybe worked a little bit.
You could actually use that as defense. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to commit a murder could be like, hello, I've been possessed. The devil made me do it.
It was something that they tried, but it was thrown out. The judge heard it and was like, no, this is bullshit.
Do you know anything about the case? Because I don't know anything about this.
I read a little bit on it yesterday, and it's fucking nuts. So Arnie Johnson was at all the exorcisms of little David, because apparently there were like 7, and he did challenge the devils, because apparently there were like 42 or something demons that this little boy was possessed with, according to the Warrens.
That's the operative term. According to the Warrens, there were 43. Always according to the Warrens.
And so apparently he was possessed. He did stab the his Debbie's landlord, and apparently the sister and the cousin or something was there, and they did try and use the so like how it happens where he walks down the road after murdering. Apparently that happened, but everything else is there's a lot of liberties taken. Because I mean it is The Conjuring, so they
Like the father
tried
stuff's not
the
real. That's it. I don't think the
yeah
father stuff's not
no
real.
no that um Ed Warren thought that David Glatzel's mom and sister were involved in the occult and somehow, or at least dabbled in witchcraft, and he thinks that's how he was possessed.
Oh my.
Yeah, no, it is. It's an odd one because, of course, they had to bulk out the film because there's probably not that much to go on when you look at the Arnie Johnson case. You have to pad it out, and you have to somehow get Ed and Lorraine into the central plot. So all of that father Custer stuff and his daughter's all completely fictional and things like that. You know, those aspects are fictional. But I think the
I don't know
main
why I
thing
wanted
is,
that to be real, but I did for some
so
reason.
did I. But apparently the Rams, whatever it's called, is it the Gathering of the Rams or something? Jess will remember, whatever it is,
The
something of the Rams, witchy Ram stuff. But that's not real. They didn't exist. Of course, occult and those sort of figurines created by occultists exist, but not that specific sect didn't exist. It's all made
Yeah,
up.
So did Arnie? So you said that Arnie did stab the landlord, but did he stab him to death? Did the landlord die?
yeah,
Okay. Oh, I guess that hints manslaughter. Yeah. Okay.
and he did initially say that no, the devil made him do it, and the case is actually called "The Devil Made Me Do It" case.
Versus the people.
Oh, is that it? That's the name of the case, is it?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
it's nuts. It's nuts. And the judge wouldn't allow Ed and Lorraine to actually. They wouldn't allow the demon possession as a defense. So Ed and Lorraine couldn't testify. And I was watching a whole clip where Ed was very upset that he wasn't allowed to testify because, according to him, it was like, how could anyone not see that this was a possession case? Which I find completely bonkers.
Bonkers. Oh my
But in
god.
Ed's world, like everything he says, when you read stuff about him, it's like, well, everything I say is right. So, of course, if I'm telling you this kid's possessed, then he's possessed. You know, it's just that's how he operated from the sound of it. So, yeah, he could try and make anyone believe anything.
I also want to point out that Vera Farmiga, like the way that they dress her up and everything, she does look very similar to the pictures of the real Warren, but Patrick Wilson looks so much better than the real Ed Warren.
Yes.
I was so
Way
disappointed
better.
when I saw a picture of Ed Warren. I remember seeing The Conjuring, then I was like, oh, I don't know much about the Warrens. And looking them up, I was like, oh, okay. They definitely took poetic license when they were casting Patrick Wilson. I bet Ed Warren would have been over the moon to see Patrick Wilson playing him. My goodness. Not that we should all be about aesthetics, but you know, not very similar.
Oh yes,
In
yes, of
temperament
course, but
either.
I just kind of find that funny. Like, oh yeah, you're fine. You were going to need to like get creative with.
Bless Ed. Well, actually, don't bless Ed. He was hanging around with 15-year-olds when he was in his 30s. Don't say anything nice
Yeah.
about him. But yeah, no, creepy. But I think you couldn't have unfortunately, Ed Warren, the things you read about him kind of translate into how he appeared. You kind of look and go, oh, creeper. But you're not going to want to believe in a man who looked like the real Ed Warren in a film. You're going to need him to be a trustworthy, very fatherly looking, very, you know, dependable husband type like Patrick Wilson.
Yeah.
He's perfect.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess never mind. I was going to say something kind of mean. I was like, well, they still worked in the heart condition in this movie, but they still
they got some truth in.
But I want to talk about the sorry. I want to talk about the climax chase scene in this movie. So this movie kind of comes to a point where we go back to formerly Father Kastner's house, and Vera Farmiga is being chased by his occultist daughter throughout these confusing tunnels beneath his house, because the altar that they needed the whole time was just beneath his house, and he kind of sort of turned a blind eye to all of this. And so there's a chase scene with her. Ed Warren shows up to try to save the day, but I laughed so hard when the occultist and by the way, that's like her name on IMDb. There's no like name given to her. She's just the occultist. She like shows up to him and literally just throws pocket sand in his face, and I died laughing because a previous episode we were talking about pocket sand as like a deterrent from monsters in movies, and now he's like confused and like just swinging this mallet all over the place. All of this was I don't know. It was all cool and interesting, but I don't know. It was just so I don't know. I feel like it was still missing some sort of oomph in this chase scene. I don't know. How did y'all like the underground tunnel chase scene in this climax?
It was a bit disorientating, but not in any way that I felt added to the plot and to the story.
Mm,
Um, it's like I don't know. It's just it didn't. It was very lackluster.
Mhm. It's a bit
yeah,
schmaltzy
yeah.
as well. I think the
Mm,
focus of the movie, which I understand because Ed and Lorraine are such an essential couple. The focus was during the chase scene of Lorraine reminding Ed of how much he really loved her when he's all possessed and going crazy and trying to like shove an axe or mallet in her head. I can't remember what it was, but it was the sort of the very typical Hollywood formula of relate back to their love and the truth, and that's how she'll break through to him. And
because
that
true
Mm,
love conquers all.
Yep. Always good defeats evil, love defeats evil. And that, I didn't mind it because I love Ed and Lorraine and I would watch The Conjuring 57 if they're still in it. I would keep watching it no matter how many stories they'll exhaust
Be
because,
careful. Yeah.
well, no, I would, I think, even if it was like just, an
Well,
absolute bog standard awful one. But the love story is very believable between the two of them. And that
mm,
it's a good hook.
That's a really interesting point that it's their love is about their love specifically conquering evil, and it's not what we kind of normally get, at least like in the first two movies, about how Catholicism is such like a heavy thing in this, and how like I in the name of name of God, wherever I cast you out to the depths of hell. It's not about that. It's just about their love as a couple. It kind of seems it kind of almost seems a little bit outside of religion at that point, which is interesting for these movies that I feel like deal so much heavily in Catholicism. It's kind of like an interesting solution, or I'm sorry, a difference in solution to this, as opposed to sitting down, praying, doing our exorcism with our rosaries. It's hey, remember we went on a date 30 years
In a
ago, and you got me
bandstand.
soda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, it was lovely. It's what I find is a big hook for the movies. So I enjoyed that aspect. There is always a part of me that kind of quite likes the dramatics of a very Catholic exorcism, but I don't think there's any other way they could have done that. I don't think if they're going to
Hmm.
have Ed chasing Lorraine, the only way she can defeat what's possessed him is through her reminding him that he loves her.
So I'm going to ask you one more question before we kind of get to the last segment of today's show. But which scene did y'all find the scariest, or what part of this movie did y'all find the scariest?
hmm.
That's interesting.
I guess I'll say that I'm kind of going to give like two answers here. I guess I definitely thought that the occult part of this, like them just finding the little like talisman thing that they found, I don't know, that like was really scary to me. That there is now this embodied person going around with real motives to like curse these people, and like I don't know, just seeing that totem, it is pretty like jarring, and it is
Mm.
trying to make you think of devil I can't say that word, devil loving, and wanting to kind of you kind of get it to like oh that's so sick and messed up, but like I don't know, it kind of worked on me. It's like this is feel kind of twisted and darker.
Mm.
But a scene that like really stuck out to me that was just scary, I don't know, I'm honestly kind of struggling with something that like really got me, besides like I don't know, like that opening shower scene with Julian Hillard kind of got me
Mm,
pretty good.
with the
um
fingers.
Mm.
yeah, the fingers got me, but I don't know, I'm gonna watch it again tonight, and then I'll have a better idea. But yeah, like the when they break into the to the funeral home, which by the way, how have we not talked about how they did that yet?
Just
That
smashed a window and walked in.
Yeah, I thought that that would scare me a bunch, but I don't know, it just didn't. It just felt kind of cheesy with like the corpse running at Ed. I don't know, but yeah, I'm kind of
Bloated
struggling to
corpse.
find what was a specific scene that really scared me.
I think for me it was the opening, just simply because I was anticipating so much. You know, when it started, we kind of pretty much started the movie, like I said, with no trailers. So you're straight into it. And so there was a real beautiful tension there that was built in. And that parody effectively of The Exorcist when the priest walks up to the very smoky house. And, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very atmospheric. And the little boy was so good. And it was so well done, you know, with Ed having his heart attack and all of that. I think that they were the most tense moments for me. And I didn't really have anything after that was as tense. I agree with you about the totem. When Lorraine's crawling underground underneath the house and stumbles across it, that did actually make me go, ooh, because I always get a bit funny about things that are real occult
Mm-hmm.
items or real occult beliefs, because, you know, they are effectively, even if you don't believe in the the religion behind it or the spirituality, it's quite spooky that people do actually practice this, and that is real,
Yeah.
unlike, you know, vampires and werewolves and things like that. So yeah, that did
Right. Yeah.
unnerve me a lot as well.
Yeah, I think that opening is definitely the most jarring, because it's not like the other openings, in terms of like you're straight in the action, you're right there. There's an exorcism going on. Um, the fact that that little boy's body contorts into all those different
Mm.
possessions like a fucking pretzel. Um, it's very, very unnerving and very unsettling. Um, and yeah, the finding the totem thing didn't freak me out as much. To be honest, the rats actually freaked me out more than anything else. And the rat crawling across the kitchen into the wall.
Those pure
Oh,
disease.
I was like, no, it's a rat. Get it out.
when it came out of the cereal
Um,
box, the cereal box
no,
thing.
that grossed me out. That
Yeah.
for me, them gross.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Actually, that was horrifying. That was horrible. Oh, and then he goes to the wall. You're like, why have you gone to the wall? Are you crazy? Don't go to where the rat crawled into. Run away from it.
Yeah, and he puts his eye right there.
You're just
And
asking for
part of
it.
me was like, "Where's the torch? Get a torch!" Like, no.
No.
This was a good jump scare for me though, because when he turns around, we do see disembodied occultist standing right behind him, which I had the hardest time telling if it was a man or a woman for most of the movie, because they kind of get such quick snippets of it. And I will say, I did like the addition of this occultist being able to teleport, I guess, like her spirit or whatever, to different parts of of the map of this movie. I guess in particular, I guess this was a scene I forgot about, was when Arnie was on the tree trying to use his chainsaw and it wouldn't work. And you see
Yes.
just
Oh,
behind him is the occultist like moving the curtains of a window. I was like, okay, I like this. This is super creepy and I love it.
astral projection,
Yeah.
is that what it's called? Astral projection?
That's it. That's
Yes.
Yeah,
it.
which is,
Yes,
yeah,
that's it.
that's really, oh, that actually was unnerving when he turns around after the rats crawled into the wall and then she's there. That actually is a very good jump scare. You're right.
As we start to get to our closing thoughts, I will kind of ask us three, how would you rank this trilogy of movies? Which one would you have at 1, 2, and 3?
E, do you want to go first?
For me, still, The Conjuring 1 is number one. I think it's probably where I fell in love with the Warrens, and even though it's a very, very Hollywood take on horror, you know, it's more accessible than a lot of horror that I like. I love it, and I love their characters. Again, Conjuring 2 is my number two, and Conjuring 3 is actually number three for me. It's still higher up than Annabelle. It's higher up than The
Oh,
Nun.
okay.
It's higher up than the rest of the Conjuring universe. It's still one, it goes for me, The Conjuring completely 1, 2, 3. I'm not as keen on the other parts of the universe personally. But yeah, and I think it's because
Mm.
it's Ed and Lorraine. It's up there. But I hate using the word weaker because I still liked a lot about it, but it isn't my favorite. It's not going to make top of my list.
I'd have to copy Eliza.
Mm-hmm.
Also 1, 2, and 3. One, because I always love the original over all the sequels. Two, again, I know it's a bit of a haunted house thing, but the Poltergeist of Enfield was probably one of the first haunting stories I heard as a kid. So I
Mm.
loved it from that aspect. And then 3, it's still good, but not as good as number 1 and 2.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree with you too. That's how I would rank it as well. And it's not that like this one I think is so bad that's why it's at the bottom of the list. It's just it's like, I don't know, it has good ideas, I think. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't have that James Wan just like, I'm gonna flex here real hard and do a really awesome tracking shot. That does not belong in a ghost movie, but you're gonna get it because I'm a good director kind of feel. Yeah, there was no shots in this. I went, wow, fucking like, damn, I'm watching like a cinematic experience here. There's nothing. I didn't have that sort of like, oh yeah moment in this, but I did like the change of pace a little bit. It was a little bit refreshing. I do see myself revisiting this movie maybe once every 2 or 3 years possibly, but I'm going to be watching it again tonight because my girlfriend hasn't seen it yet. She wants to watch it, so I'll see how I feel about it after a second viewing. But yeah, I agree with how you two ranked the trilogy.
I think it deserves a close up second viewing. You know, quite soon after. So I saw it 2 weeks ago, nearly. I will watch it again very soon. I think just to kind of reaffirm how I feel. But again, I liked it, and if I probably wasn't comparing it to the first two films, I probably would have come away from it going, "Oh my god, 5 stars! I love it," because I love the characters, and it's a different. I mean, I love the fact it's Satanic Panic. I love the fact that there's a bit of a cult and it makes it different. That is something I do like about it because it's not the typical possession. Well, it's not the typical house, haunting kind of vibe. But again, I just do prefer the other two. I can't help it.
Right? Yeah, they're great. They're great. Well, thank you, Eliza and Jess of the Witchery Podcast, for joining me today to discuss and give our rapid reactions to The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, available in theaters and HBO Max. Thank you two so much for coming on. Where can people find the Witchery Podcast?
Anywhere you get your podcast. Wow, how did I switch to an American accent? My brain is completely fried.
There we go. Anywhere you get them. Also, www.witcherypodcast.com, and we're on Instagram at the Witchery Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will put a link in the show notes so people can swipe over and start listening to your show. I started with your Twilight Zone episode. That was a good one. Go listen to the Witchery Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at bruckerhorror. Be sure to check out my Buy Me a Coffee page where I have some fun rewards, some fun free reads, and some exclusive movie commentary tracks. And I want to give a shout out to my one person, my skeleton crew, Shelly. Thank you, Shelly, so much for the support. And I will see you guys next week with The Invisible Man from 1933. Goodbye.